Travel Through Grief. Welcome to Travel Through Grief. I'm your host, Ellen Beckemeyer. I am so grateful you have chosen to spend a little time with me today. I want to begin with a question that may seem simple, but I think it has more depth than we often realize. When was the last time you looked up at the night sky? I don't mean while walking from the grocery store to your car or glancing out the window before closing the curtains. I mean, when was the last time you intentionally stopped, took a deep breath, and simply looked? No agenda, no destination, just you, the night, and a sky that has been there long before any of us arrived, and will still be there long after we're gone. There's something about a clear night that has always captured my imagination. Maybe it's because during the day our eyes are busy looking at everything around us. We're watching traffic, reading emails, checking our calendars, making that grocery list, answering the text messages, and trying to remember where the heck we put our keys. We're just trying to keep up with all the little responsibilities that fill an ordinary day. But when night falls, especially on one of those evenings when the air is warm and the stars are bright, it feels as though the universe gently asks us to slow down. It invites us to lift our eyes instead of keeping them fixed on whatever is immediately in front of us. I think that's one of the reasons grief can feel so different after the sun goes down. During the day, we can keep ourselves pretty busy and always moving. We have appointments to get to, laundry to fold, work to finish, errands to run, and people expecting something from us. Even when our hearts are heavy, life has a way of demanding our attention. But nighttime is quieter. The phone stops ringing as much. The dishes are finally done. The TV gets turned off. And then the house settles into silence, and suddenly we're left alone with our thoughts. If you've ever laid awake staring at the ceiling, replaying those conversations, wishing you had one more hug, one more phone call, one more chance to say something you never got to say, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. I've had nights like that. Maybe you have too. There have been evenings when sleep simply wasn't interested in finding me. My mind kept wandering through memories, through questions that had no answers, through dreams that changed because life changed. Those nights can feel incredibly lonely. But over the years, I've also discovered something unexpected. Sometimes, those same nights have become moments of incredible peace. Not because my circumstances suddenly changed, but because I finally stepped outside. I looked up and remembered that my world was much bigger than the pain I was carrying. Grief has a way of making our lives feel very small. We naturally focus on what's directly in front of us because that's what survival requires. We think about the next appointment, the next bill, the next difficult conversation, but we also think about the next anniversary that's approaching, or the next holiday. We're not quite sure how to navigate that. Our vision becomes narrow, and that's understandable. When your heart is hurting, you're not thinking 5 years ahead. Sometimes you're simply trying to make it through 5 o'clock this afternoon. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing. Sometimes surviving today is the greatest accomplishment you can claim, and I think we need to give ourselves a lot more grace for those seasons than we often do. At the same time, I think it's important to remember that surviving isn't the whole story. Every once in a while, we need something that reminds us there's still a larger picture that's unfolding. For me, the night sky often does exactly that. The stars, they have this remarkable way of putting life into perspective. They don't minimize our pain, and they certainly don't erase it. Instead, they quietly remind us that we are part of something much bigger than this particular chapter. Every generation before us has looked at these same stars. People who celebrated weddings, they looked up at the sky. Parents holding newborn babies, they looked up at the sky. Lion King proved that. Soldiers leaving home, widows grieving the love of their lives, they all looked up at the sky. The travelers crossing the oceans, the children making wishes on shooting stars, the grandparents sitting on front porches during summer evenings, they all shared the same ceiling above them. That thought has always brought me comfort. Sometimes when we're grieving, it's easy to believe that no one has ever felt exactly what we're feeling. Of course, our circumstances are unique because every relationship is unique. But grief itself is one of the few experiences that connects every generation. No one gets through life without saying goodbye. No one reaches old age without collecting memories of people they wish were still here. Somehow, that realization doesn't make the grief smaller, but it does make us feel a little less alone. It reminds us that we're walking a path millions of people have walked before us, and somehow, one careful step at a time, they found their way forward. One of the things I love most about traveling is experiencing a place after dark. When I was in Paris, I saw a night sky where the stars were twinkling like you would see on television. I had never seen stars do that before. It was stunning, the way they sparkled. It was as if they were speaking to me. Most visitors, they spend their days checking famous landmarks off a list. They rush from one attraction to another because they really don't want to miss anything. I understand that because I've done it too. But some of my favorite travel memories have happened when there wasn't an itinerary anymore. Walking beside a quiet lake after dinner, sitting on a bench in a city square while musicians played somewhere in the distance. Something very cool is when you look out an airplane window after everyone else has fallen asleep and you look at sky and you're like, I'm up here with the stars. Maybe it's standing outside a hotel in a place I'd never been before and realizing that even though I was hundreds or thousands of miles from home, the same stars were shining overhead. There's something deeply comforting about that. Home isn't always a place. Sometimes it's just a reminder that we're connected to something far greater than ourselves. I often thought about how people traveled before GPS existed. I am a child of paper maps. They didn't have a phone telling them when to turn left or announcing that they would arrive in 12 minutes. You know, sailors, they crossed entire oceans by learning the stars. Explorers found their way through unfamiliar landscapes because they understood the night sky. Imagine the confidence that was required. Imagine trusting something so constant that even when everything around you looked unfamiliar, you still knew where you were because you knew what was above you. I think that's a beautiful metaphor for healing. When everything in your life changes, when the landscape of your future no longer resembles what you expected, maybe the answer isn't to stare harder at the road beneath your feet. Maybe sometimes the answer is to lift your eyes and remember the things that haven't changed. Your values, faith, love, resilience, your capacity to begin again. One of my favorite things to watch during the summer is a meteor shower. Not always easy because we know those clouds come through. But there's something magical about knowing they are coming. Gathering a blanket, finding a quiet place away from a city, all those lights, and just simply waiting. That's really all you can do. You can't hurry a meteor shower. You can't demand that a shooting star appear because you're getting impatient. You can't schedule one for 8:17 p.m. on a Tuesday evening. You simply wait, keep watching, and eventually, if you're patient, one streaks across the sky, and everyone around you smiles. Healing reminds me of that. We all want to know exactly when we're going to feel better. We want someone to hand us a calendar and say, circle this date, because that's when life starts making sense again. Unfortunately, grief doesn't work that way. Healing usually arrives quietly. One day you notice you laughed. Another day you realize you made plans for the next month without feeling guilty. A few weeks later, you discover you've been talking about your loved one with more smiles than tears. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens the way the stars appear, as your eyes adjust to the darkness. That's one of the greatest lessons the night sky teaches me. The stars don't suddenly appear after sunset. They've been there all along. During the day, they're simply hidden by brighter light. Hope often works exactly the same way. There are seasons when grief is so overwhelming that hope feels completely absent. We assume it's gone because we can't see it. But maybe it isn't gone at all. Maybe it's simply waiting for our hearts to slowly adjust. Maybe healing isn't about creating hope from nothing. Maybe it's about rediscovering what has quietly been there all along. We live in a culture that loves speed. You have your fast food, your fast internet, overnight shipping, 30-day transformations. We celebrate quick results because they make us feel productive. Nature, however, seems completely uninterested in our deadlines. The trees don't rush from spring to autumn. The rivers don't hurry to reach the ocean. Mountains are not worried about whether they're making enough progress this week. Even the moon gives itself permission to be only a small crescent some nights before eventually becoming full again. I think we could all learn something from that. Maybe we don't have to rush our healing either. Maybe we don't have to apologize for still having difficult days. Maybe because the next version of ourselves takes exactly as long as it needs to take. When I was a little girl, I remember lying in the grass on summer evenings, trying to count all those stars. Of course, it was impossible. Every time I thought I'd found them all, another one would catch my eye. Looking back now, I think that's one of the reasons I still love the night sky. It reminds me that life always contains more possibility than I can see in the moment. Grief tries to convince us the story is over, that the best memories have already been made, and that most meaningful chapters are behind us. But you know what? Hope quietly disagrees. It whispers that there are still friendships waiting to be formed. There's still places waiting to be explored, conversations waiting to happen, and laughter we haven't heard yet. And still dreams that haven't introduced themselves to us. We may not see them today, but that doesn't mean they aren't already out there waiting for us. As I've grown older, I've also become much more comfortable with mystery. When I was younger, I wanted answers for everything. I'm sure I annoyed my parents. I wanted every loose end tied up with a nice, neat bow. I wanted every tragedy explained and every disappointment to make immediate sense. But life has taught me that's simply not how the journey works. There are questions I'll probably never answer, and surprisingly, I am coming to make peace with that. I've learned that saying, I don't know, is not a weakness. Sometimes it is actually the beginning of wisdom. We don't have to understand everything to continue living. We don't have to solve every mystery before choosing joy again. Sometimes it's enough to simply stand beneath the stars, to breathe deeply, and remember that there is beauty in not knowing exactly how the rest of the story will unfold. So tonight, if the weather cooperates wherever you are, I'd like to leave you with a simple invitation. I want you to step outside for 5 minutes. Leave your phone inside. Don't take a picture. Don't post about it. Just be there. Look up at the sky and let yourself remember that your life is part of something beautifully vast. If you see one bright star, let it remind you of someone you love. If you happen to catch a shooting star, let yourself make a wish just like you did when you were a kid. And if clouds cover everything overhead, remember this. Those stars haven't disappeared. They're simply hidden for a little while. Hope is often like that too. We don't always see it, but that doesn't mean it isn't there. Thank you for joining me today on Travel Through Grief. Wherever you find yourself on your journey, I hope you'll remember that the night sky still holds wonder. It always has, and it always will. And despite everything you've been through, despite every goodbye, every disappointment, and every unexpected turn, I believe your life still holds wonder too. Your story is not finished. There are still pages waiting to be written, still roads waiting to be traveled, still memories waiting to be made, and most of all, still beautiful nights ahead when you'll look up at the stars and realize you've come farther than you've ever imagined. Until next time, take gentle care of yourself. Keep looking for the light, and remember, there is always a way through, and the stars are always there to be with you. If this episode connected with you, I'd love for you to follow our podcast, leave a review, or share it with someone who may need it. Those small actions truly help new podcasts like Travel Through Grief grow and reach more people. And thank you to everyone who has already listened, rated, reviewed, and supported this journey. I appreciate you more than you know. Until next time, keep finding your way forward.